In 2019, a 34-year-old software engineer named Marcus Ramirez walked into a psychiatrist's office in Austin, Texas, convinced he had clinical depression. He'd been on 2 different antidepressants for 3 years. Neither worked. His therapist had run out of ideas, but his psychiatrist did something unusual that day. She didn't prescribe a 3rd medication. She ordered a gut microbiome test. What came back changed everything Marcus thought he knew about his own mind. Within 90 days of targeting his gut specifically, his anxiety scores dropped by 61%. His sleep improved, his brain fog lifted. He hadn't changed his job, hadn't changed his relationships. He changed what lived inside his intestines. Here's the thing. Marcus's story isn't rare anymore. Scientists now call your gut the second brain, and it's been making decisions for you without your permission. What you ate for breakfast this morning already changed how you feel right now. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why, and more importantly, what you can do about it today. To understand why your gut runs your mood, you need to go back to 1996. That's when Dr. Michael Gershon, a neurobiologist at Columbia University, published a book called The Second Brain. At the time, the scientific community largely ignored it. The idea that your intestines could influence your emotions seemed almost absurd. The brain was the brain. The gut was the gut. They were separate systems doing separate jobs. But Gershon had discovered something uncomfortable. Your gut contains approximately 500 million neurons. That's more than your spinal cord. It produces over 90% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter most directly linked to your mood, your sense of calm, and your ability to feel happy. 90%, not in your skull, in your intestines. And it doesn't just produce serotonin and send it upstairs. It communicates directly with your brain through a superhighway called the vagus nerve, sending signals upward at a ratio of roughly 9-to-1. Meaning for every 1 signal your brain sends down to your gut sends 9 back up. Your brain isn't running the show, your gut is. For decades after Gershon's work, research moved slowly. But in 2004, researchers at Kyushu University in Japan ran an experiment that cracked things wide open. They raised 2 groups of mice. One group was raised completely germ-free, 0 bacteria in their guts. The second group had normal, healthy gut microbiomes. Then both groups were exposed to a stress test. The germ-free mice had cortisol responses, that's your stress hormone, that were dramatically higher than the normal mice. Dramatically. The researchers then did something brilliant. They reintroduced one specific strain of bacteria, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, back into some of the germ-free mice. Their stress response normalized. 1 bacteria. That's all it took to shift the stress chemistry of an entire animal. This was the moment the scientific world started paying serious attention. Because if bacteria could regulate stress hormones in mice, the logical next question was terrifying. What's happening inside the 68% of Americans who have an imbalanced gut microbiome right now? What's that doing to their moods, their anxiety, their daily decisions? Here's where it gets personal. And uncomfortable. In 2015, a landmark study published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine tracked 40 healthy women with no history of mental illness. Half ate a fermented food diet rich in probiotics for 4 weeks. The other half ate a standard diet. Brain scans were taken before and after. The women who ate the probiotic-rich diet showed measurably reduced activity in the brain regions associated with emotional reactivity and anxiety. Their brains had physically changed in 4 weeks, not from therapy, not from medication, from food. Now think about the inverse, because this cuts both ways. A 2021 study out of University College Cork analyzed data from over 2,000 adults and found that high consumption of the scientific community fully crossed the threshold in 2022. The APA, the American Psychiatric Association, formally acknowledged the gut-brain axis as a legitimate area of clinical research for mental health treatment. This wasn't a fringe blog post. This was the most powerful mental health institution in the United States, validating what researchers had been screaming for 25 years. And then the pharmaceutical industry noticed. By 2023, over 30 clinical trials were actively running in the US and Europe, specifically targeting gut microbiome interventions as treatments for major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, and even early-stage Alzheimer's. 30 trials, simultaneously. That's not curiosity. That's a gold rush. And the data driving those trials is extraordinary. A 2023 meta-analysis in Nature Mental Health reviewed 59 randomized controlled trials and found that probiotic interventions produced statistically significant reductions in depression and anxiety symptoms across all age groups, not in a handful of studies. Across 59 of them, the evidence has crossed a threshold that can't be walked back. Your gut is a mental health organ. The only question now is whether you're treating it like one. Right now, in 2024, the gut-brain axis is one of the fastest-growing fields in all of medicine. Stanford, Harvard, and Johns Hopkins all have dedicated gut-brain research labs. The NIH committed $170 million to the Human Gut Microbiome Project. And consumer awareness is exploding. Searches for gut health and anxiety have increased by 312% in the last 3 years alone. But here's the most important part. The practical science is already ahead of mainstream medicine. Most general practitioners are not yet trained to evaluate your gut microbiome as part of mental health treatment. That means the gap between what science knows and what your doctor tells you is currently enormous. Which means you are sitting in a unique window right now, a moment where understanding this information puts you ahead of the curve. Back to Marcus Ramirez from the beginning of this video. His psychiatrist wasn't ahead of her time. She was simply paying attention to the research that already existed. She recommended he track his gut health daily using a microbiome-aware health app, and she suggested he begin a targeted probiotic protocol. Those two tools closed his loop, and they're available to you right now. In the next 5 years, this is where the science is pointing, and you want to know this now, not when it hits mainstream news in 2028. First, personalized psychobiotics. These are probiotic formulas tailored specifically to your individual microbiome profile to treat specific mental health conditions. Clinical trials are already running for targeted strains against treatment-resistant depression. Second, gut microbiome profiling as standard intake for psychiatric patients. Several European health systems are already piloting this. The US will follow. Third, and this one is fascinating, my fecal microbiome transplants, which already show a 70 to 90% success rate for certain gut infections, are now being studied for anxiety and autism spectrum disorder at over a dozen research institutions. The direction is unmistakable. Mental health treatment is moving from the brain downward. And if you wait for your primary care physician to bring this up unprompted, statistically you'll be waiting until 2030. The people who are winning their mental and emotional health right now are the ones who started treating their gut like the second brain it actually is. Today, not when it becomes conventional wisdom. So here's what you do with all of this. Step 1. Cut the ultra-processed foods for 30 days. Not forever. 30 days. The 2015 brain scan study showed measurable changes in 4 weeks. Your gut lining completely regenerates new cells every 3 to 5 days. You can move fast on this. Step 2. Add fermented foods. Real ones. Kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut, plain yogurt with live cultures. Not flavored sugary yogurt, live cultures. Step 3. If you want to accelerate, this is where I'd point you toward 2 tools that genuinely helped Marcus and thousands of others on this same journey. The first is Seed DS-01, a clinically studied daily symbiotic. That's a probiotic and prebiotic combined, formulated using peer-reviewed research specifically targeting the gut-brain axis. It's not a generic drugstore probiotic. It uses strains with clinical data behind them. Link is in the description. The second tool is the Viome Gut Intelligence Test. You send in a sample, they sequence the RNA of your actual... Before you go, hit subscribe if this changed how you think about your mental health. Because the next video in this series covers exactly which foods are silently destroying your microbiome right now, including 3 that are marketed as healthy. You're going to want to see that. Drop a comment below. Have you ever noticed a connection between what you eat and your mood that same day? I read every single comment in the first hour, and share this with someone who's been struggling with anxiety or depression and hasn't found answers yet. You might be sending them the most important video they've ever watched. The link to Seed DS-01 and the Viome Gut Intelligence Test are both in the description below. I only recommend tools I'd put in front of my own family. Now let's get your gut working for you instead of against you. Disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes only. Nothing constitutes medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional.